Welcome into the Morning Glory Show. I am your host, Jake Robertson. I hope you are shit showered, shaved, and you got some mayo in your cup because it's time to tighten up. The draft kicked off yesterday, and as always, I am joined by my co-host, Jonathan Miller at Esports Valen, and B-Will at BWillTFTV. How we doing today, boys?
Good, man. Good, man. What a night yesterday was. I know y'all had a good night.
Yeah, we had something. We had a something kind of night. No, it was all jokes aside. It was good. It was one of those reactions where you're like, man, I don't prefer this over this fancy shiny pick. But after, letting the alcohol kind of seep through your system a little bit, you start to realize Titans just got a dog, man. So I was definitely in that camp of initial reaction was like, uh-oh. And then it was like, wait a second. So
got a mastiff too. It wasn't just a regular dog. It was a mastiff, a damn big cane corso.
Fucking Great Dane.
Yeah.
Obviously, if you guys are unaware, the Titans drafted JC Latham, tackle out of Alabama. He's going to play left tackle for us. Going into TD, talked about it. Basically, he played right tackle his entire career at Alabama, played a little right guard as a freshman. But he was the number 2 high school prospect coming out as a left tackle. And that's where he's going to play as a Tennessee Titan. So this is a guy that is a fucking mountain of a man at 6'5", 6'6", 340. And he talked about it on stage that he's dropped 20 pounds since last season at Alabama. So he's slimming up. He looked like it. He looks good. And I think he's got to continue that trajectory because that was probably his biggest knock coming out was he might be just a little bit too big and he might be more of a guard at the next level. And I think we've kind of established that he could probably play tackle, and the man is a mauler. He's a mountain. He's Mount Olympus, in my opinion. So
most definitely.
Can we talk about the biggest thing, Jake? I think to me the biggest thing here is that national media kind of screwed us over a little bit, right? Because this is going to be my excuse. JC Latham flew under my radar quite a bit for 2 reasons, in my opinion. One of them being the kind of misdirection that the national media gave us, Matt Miller being kind of the leading charge on that, but others as well, that said, this guy's really great. He's a mauler. He's huge. He's got great athleticism for his size, but he's probably a guard. And some NFL executives have said he's a guard. And so in everybody's brain, you're like, okay, well, we need a left tackle. We don't need a guard. And it's like, it was just easy to write off because then you're looking at guys like Olu and Joel, and then you have the flashy receivers that you're in range of. So we kind of just like brush this guy off. And then the, 24 hours, 48 hours leading into the pick, we're like, wait, JC Latham at 7, like, hold on. No, surely not, right? And then the pick happens, and then half the fan base is like, don't love that. And I think it's kind of not our fault, to be completely honest, because then after that I said, okay, you know what? I'm not a problem with admitting when I'm wrong. Let me go take a look at this tape. And dear Lord, this guy was dominant. Not just a little dominant. This guy was overwhelmingly dominant. Like, in over 2 seasons, collected, it was over, I think it was 1,016 pass pro snaps. He only gave up 2 sacks in pass pro. And that's just like his secondary good trait. This guy, as a run blocker, is phenomenal. Like, in zone schemes, he literally moves the entire line. Like, multiple bodies get shifted. And I'm just like in awe. And I'm like, how did this guy fly so far under my radar? So I think that's a big part of it too.
I mean, he did that in the big boy conference as well. I mean, it wasn't no slouch conference. Yeah. He did it in the Southeastern Conference, premier college football. I think it's just a lesson that fans can use just to take these things that the national media says with a grain of salt, because they're getting fed stuff from other teams, and they're just take it with a grain of salt.
I had the hinkling this was the direction they were going to go, just based on the rumor mill that was going around late into this week. But like Stoney Killy brings up in the comments, I got a cast iron skillet in the kitchen that looks like it's not JC Latham.
Bro.
And that cooking up pancakes in that skillet. Because as a run blocker, the man is a man amongst boys. And like he goes on to further say, if you guys haven't already, flip on the Texas A&M tape and watch him make their 5-star edge rusher look like a baby.
Bro.
The Latham pick, it's instant reaction. I was kind of disappointed just because of the guys that were left there on the board. It's not a slight to JC by any means, because I do think he's a great prospect and I still had a high grade on him. But when you have guys out there like Olu Fashanu, who obviously I had as tackle 1, or Roma Dunze, who I thought what the pick was actually going to be, or a guy like Brock Bowers. I mean, there's guys out there that I thought it might be a slight reach, but they talked about how this is big coach. Bill Callahan, this is his favorite prospect in the entire draft, is what they said. And that could just be coach speak as much as it is. But I trust his opinion as an offensive line evaluator over my own. I'm not going to say that I don't have my faults as an evaluator. I'm going to trust Bill Callahan and what he sees in Latham. And I think, obviously, the talent is there. It's just molding that clay into a startable left tackle.
Yeah. And, the thing is I heard there were some rumors about Fashanu's health coming into the draft really late, so that could have been a reason he dropped. And I feel bad for him, honestly, because he's got to go into the NFL and get coached by Keith Carter.
Yep.
So, I mean, I feel bad for him, and we'll see how he does with that. So I don't know, but I just real quick before we get into the JC Latham, well, even more. But I mean, how refreshing is it that we have the first press conference after we draft a guy at 7 overall? We're not playing games. We don't know where he's gonna play. Yada yada yada. First thing they say is he's gonna play left tackle for us, and if he doesn't work at left tackle, we'll just throw him a right tackle and we'll fit somebody over at left tackle. How refreshing is that?
Yeah, that's huge. Go ahead, Jim.
I didn't like the quote. I see what Rand is getting to, but I don't want to draft a guy and immediately say, hey, if this guy doesn't work out, we like the guys we have in-house. That just seems unnecessary. And we don't know what the actual initial question was, but I'm going to just say, hey, we believe in this kid. We're going to put him at left tackle, and he's going to play great. So
they kind of overspoke, Jake. So like what happened was
a little bit.
Callahan had a quote where he just kept talking. That was the problem, is he just overspoke. He literally said, like, yeah, we're going to fit him in at left tackle. We think he's athletic enough. We think he's going to be great there. He played left tackle in high school. And guys, if it doesn't work out, then we'll just move him over to right tackle because we need a tackle. And then that was like, what did you just say? So I think he just kind of overspoke a little bit, but I don't think it's a problem. I think what the team was trying to get across is that everybody, like Callahan, Rand, they know what the media was doing with JC Latham. They saw he clearly was a right tackle in college. JC addressed it right away, which you can tell all the conversations that happened privately with him in his visit all came out last night. They're like, spoke to Bill Callahan for 2 hours, went over, last year's tape of the guys he coached, other people in the NFL, my tape. We went over everything and talked it, and he was like, yeah, the plan is I'm going to be the left tackle. So they wouldn't have drafted him if they didn't feel confident there. And JC wouldn't have said that if he was like, okay, no, I'm a little worried about going back to – he's like, I'm going to go back to left tackle. So everything that the media kind of gave us was just unclear and not very straightforward information. And if you're not doing your extensive own research, like you literally have to cut on the tape and watch him and go, oh, like this guy can move to left tackle. He's destroying folks. So I think we were just kind of misled, and the guys kind of overspoke a little bit last night and kind of scared everybody. But he's going to play left tackle, and he's going to do it effectively. He did it with Jedrick Wills, and it's the same, basically the same mold of a guy from the same school. So I'm pretty confident that he'll be able to do it there.
So he's used to the footwork from playing left tackle. It's not like it's completely foreign to him. So he played it in high school. He worked on it. Saban let him practice at left tackle a little bit throughout the season. And then he even worked in the offseason a little bit at left tackle, because I saw an interview where he called Saban literally after the season last year and said, hey, do you want me to practice left tackle or right tackle? And Saban's like, well, we got guys coming back, so I'll probably just need you to practice at right tackle. So that's another thing. I mean, this guy's a team player. He's going to do what's best for the team, and he doesn't have that that big ego that I have to play, yada. You know what I mean? He's going to when he comes to play for us, but that's a good thing in the background to say, this guy's going to be a good teammate as well. So
100%. And I mean, he came out after the draft. It was an interview that said, "Hey, I've been practicing at left tackle since the season ended. I wanted to play left tackle, and the reason he didn't at Alabama was because they had Evan Neal was at left tackle when he got there, so they put him at right tackle, and then they bring in the number one left tackle as a freshman at a high school. Yeah." So they were like, well, let's keep the continuity in this offensive line, and let's put him at left tackle and keep Latham at right tackle. It wasn't that Latham can't play right tackle. It's just Nick Saban staying black and white, keep it as status quo. You're already great there. Stay there. So there's by no means a slight to Latham in that, in the slightest. And I'm just going to trust Bill Callahan there.
That's a life lesson in that, too, real quick before we go. I mean, he could have easily jumped into the portal, chased a bag, and played left tackle somewhere, but he's stuck around, showed some loyalty to Saban, and it pays off for him in the end. He's a top 7 pick in the NFL draft. So
it paid off, and he didn't test at all either. He was at the combine. He did some of the drills. He just waited. He did his measurables, and that was it. And that tends to tell me that the league was higher on him than the media was to begin with, just because they were like, hey, you don't need a fucking test. You're good, bro. That's what it is. But if you guys can check us out, the chat is filling in. Join guys like Lone Star Titan in the chat. He says, good morning. Could have been a great morning if we selected a doozy. And I do personally agree. He said, all right, I'm done. I'm only looking ahead. The draft, and Stoney pretty much alluded to it as well, the draft's not over. One pick is not going to make or break this draft in any means. We got a long fucking weekend ahead of us, boys. So
big time.
We'll be talking about that later as well. We're going to talk about who the Titans might select here at 38, and it might be a trade down as well. But yeah, pop up in the chat. Join us over on YouTube. If you're on Twitter, hit the retweet button, like it, drop comments there as well. Do all the fucking social things. But yes, JC Latham. Great prospect. Might be a slight reach, but when we're talking intangibles and just upside, the upside is 100% there. If we're just looking at that alone, he might be the best tackle prospect out of all of these guys. Joe Alt is very cookie cutter, good and great, good to very good at everything. JC Latham has these traits that put him over the top. There are things that he needs to work on. He might not be a blue chip talent because of the overall things he's still got to put together, but he has the ability to be a blue chip player at the next level. So,
absolutely.
Thank God for Jim Harbaugh.
Thank God. Thank God.
And just to dive in,
yeah,
Jake, sorry, I was going to say, just to like dive into him as a player, I feel like most of the Titans fan base don't really know like kind of what he is, right? And what's really fascinating about JC is that the way he gets out in his pass sets are like these massive steps that he takes. Like there's some reps where he literally moves his entire body like this and takes these huge steps. So he has like this great base. When you watch him like this right here, and he
jumps at and 6 o'clock in the morning.
Pinning the show at 14:32 to take a screenshot.
Do whatever you got to do. It was impressive, and it was just like that, to be fair. But no, what's fun about him and what's interesting about him when you watch him on tape is that he moves like to the eye. You're like, this guy is slow, but as you watch the players around him, you're like, holy shit, this guy is like 340 and absolutely getting it, like moving. Like his pass set, his sets are, his footwork is almost so deep that he gets beat inside sometimes because he's like, I am not going to get beat to the outside. And that type of thing was really impressive to me because I don't think people realize like the size disparity in your average tackle. And so to see him move like that kind of gave me some, because my pause was like, this guy he's massive. Like surely he's going to get like speed to power or just straight up speed rushers are going to beat him to the outside. No, most of the time he gets beat inside because of it. So after taking a really, really close look at his game, I'm very, very confident that they just believe that this guy was arguably the best or maybe the second best tackle in the draft. And I think that Titans fans we just got like the wool pulled over our eyes a little bit. And it's a shame. And thankfully we were not in that draft room, because maybe all of us would have passed on from that. But before we get done talking about moving on from JC Latham, I think it would be good to kind of address like those other players potentially and what that means losing them. I don't know what you had on the agenda, Jake, but
no, we can definitely dive into it. Personally, my pick, how I saw the first 6 picks playing out in my final mock, played out exactly, other than I had the Jets moving up to 5 to draft Alt. But I thought the Giants were going, Jets too. Yeah, I had Malik Neighbors going to the Giants ultimately, which crushes my soul, as he was the number 1 pick on my big board. And I just knew that's what was going to happen, just crush my soul. So I would have ultimately gone Rome Odunze where we picked Latham personally, because I had him as one of the only other blue chip talents on my big board, other than Brock Bowers, who I actually have higher, but positional value I would have rather had Rome. And I actually had Tulisi Fuanga over JC Latham as well. But with Fuanga, he is a pure right tackle. That is a guy you don't want to switch over to the left side. So JC Latham, bringing him in and switching him over, I'm perfectly fine with that. And they're very, very close in my big board.
I don't think Fuaga's measurements were as good as Latham's either. So
they were
that's
not,
why I had
100%.
Latham over Fuanga.
Yeah, Fuanga definitely has the less of a length, and we're talking maybe a guy that is going to kick into guard potentially. We'll see how that plays out. But I do like Fuanga and his ability for just the run game in general, and he's an amazing player. But apples to apples, relatively the same. Not sad with that. I think we can all agree the trade down would have probably been the best option here.
100%.
And Rand talked about it. He said the phones were ringing off the hook, and they just didn't like
I don't believe that.
What the offers were.
I believe it, and I don't think they took a trade because I think the offers were dog shit. Because
they probably were.
A couple weeks ago, actually, it was about a week ago, I released a video on my channel, and I talked about it. In that the trades, it just felt, and I was spot on. The trades in the top of the draft felt like the talent was too great for the disparity of what the offer of compensation will be. Meaning teams that are wanting to trade up are not going to be able to offer the haul of picks that teams trading down would likely warrant, because the talent is so good at the top of the draft. And so the Titans clearly had JC Latham probably as their tackle 1 behind Joe, or in front of Joe Alt. But I'm sure if Alt was there at 7, they would have snagged him if Latham wasn't there. But regardless, they were like, okay, like we're just not hearing good enough trades. And when you looked at the trades that did go through in the first round, nothing crazy, right? Like the Vikings were literally like, we'll just move 1 spot. There's so many situations that were. Yeah, the trade compensation was not that great. So the teams that did trade down were like, okay, well, we like a couple of guys, so like sure. So like we didn't see any crazy trades like we predicted, and I predicted that because the draft was just, the talent was just too good. So it's like, what are you going to send multiple? Like Arizona was like, send us 3 first-round picks and more, and teams were like, no thanks, and so everyone just stayed put. So I think Rand was honest, and I also think that they had a chance to trade down a lot of spots, and I think that they knew that they would probably lose their guy to the Jets or one of those teams. And so they're like, screw it. It's not worth losing him over moving down 7 spots for like a couple late round picks. So I think that's honestly what happened.
And then as well, as soon as Alt gets drafted, we sort of lose all our leverage there, with teams. So if Alt's still on the board there, we've still got a good bit of leverage. If there's no tackle taken, we've still got a ton of leverage on the board there to where we can move back and get what we want. But I bet you they just lowballed the shit out of us as soon as Alt got picked. And those 20 minutes, people got to realize that's only 15 minutes that we have to really execute a trade. And teams are going to go back on what they offer because, the market of it's changed with Alt being picked. So, I bet you they just lowballed us from there. But we were so close to getting Neighbors, man. And I started believing, unfortunately. I started customizing a jersey. I started looking at his highlights. just in that 5 minutes of hope, I was just thinking, I was like, oh my God, this could really happen. And then when we were just sitting there like, this could really happen. But, you know, the Giants did what they're supposed to do. They picked him. And then Latham comes up. I wouldn't have been mad with, I'm not mad with Latham. I was a little stunned. I wasn't mad. But, you know, Latham's cool. Bowers would have been all right. I wouldn't have been mad at that. Of course, obvious, you know, the best thing would have been a trade back. But like we said, we got lowballed, and then that 15 minutes is hard to do all that. And then Olu would have been great as well, but then they say about the health issues coming out. So, you know, I'm not mad about it. I can see the vision. It's just a lot of people didn't see the vision of where Carthon, Callahan were going. You know, they want to be a little more balanced than Cincinnati was, because that's sort of been a thorn in their side with how unbalanced they are. And you can see Cincinnati is trying to get to that with who they picked up in free agency this year. They picked up 2 tackles of the same archetype and profile type as JC Latham. So we just got what they got, but a 21-year-old kid, and he's 340 freaking pounds. So
they smoke screened us, boys.
Yeah,
they got us. They got us good. Brian Callahan ran. They got us good. They know exactly what they needed to placate the media. So hats off to them. I don't think anybody in the public saw this pick coming. Apparently, internally, some murmurs came out because like Chris Sims and Florio were like, it's JC Latham. It's JC Latham like a day before. So I do believe that JC Latham was their pick, was their guy going in. But yeah, my reaction was the same. As far as Rome goes, I was really big on Rome. Rome, I rarely mocked him at 7, but the entire time I was just doing it in my head, right? I was like, no, I said this to B-Will 2 months ago. I tweeted at you. I said, there's no shot that Neighbors makes it to 7. And I stood firm on that. Marvin Harrison Jr. was not making it to 7. So I was like, if enough quarterbacks go, and Rome is going to be available, and it's going to be Rome versus a tackle. That's what the Titans are going to be up against. And Brian Callahan told us last night in the presser, like, we believe that our greatest, essentially, in so many words, we believe our greatest need is the tackle position. We signed Calvin Ridley. We have a guy in D-Hop who can still very much make plays and be productive, which, by the way, we need to address that. It looks like all signs are pointing to D-Hop telling them, like, hey, guys, I'm not necessarily done after next year. Like, I might want to stay type shit, right? So I think that there's a good chance that D-Hop maybe extends his career by a year or so, and all of a sudden there's not a gaping need in the wide receiver room. So they probably said, okay, well, all right, we'll just take a receiver later and we'll go tackle, which we think is the biggest need. So it makes sense now.
Well, Dunze ended up being that girl at the end of the bar about 2 o'clock that you went and you would have bought drinks for at 2 o'clock, but you wouldn't have bought drinks for at 10. You know what I mean?
I would have. Maybe not when I first got to the bar, but at 10, I would have.
10's early, man. What are you talking?
She's hot though, you know.
Lights are off. Lights are dim. I think the biggest surprise out of the first round was the quarterbacks. I mean, obviously, it was pretty chalk up there at the top. I mean, you got Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Drake May. You could have switched Drake May, Jaden Daniels, and I know, Jonathan, you like May over Daniels. But then Michael Penix comes off the board at 8 to Atlanta, who already has Kirk Cousins. This is the biggest surprise of the draft for me. And then it only continues from there. Minnesota, they move up 1 spot with the Jets and draft J.J. McCarthy, who was their guy all along in my speculation. And then Bo Nix comes off the board at 12 to Denver. I was like, that's going to help the Titans at 38 because these guys are it just pushes the talent down the board even more. It might take away a potential trade candidate maybe at 38, but there's so much talent left on the board into the second round. Plenty of first round talent, in my opinion. Is there any other guy? I mean, Stoney alluded to it in the comments. Cincinnati, they've got 2 tackles that are 6'8", 335 plus, and then they drafted Amarius Mims. So,
same ilk, same profile. Just big guys you're going to put on islands out there.
Yeah. And I mean, I guess you could potentially kick one of those guys into guard. I mean, at that
Trent Brown ain't going to guard.
No, hell no.
No.
Hell no.
He'll eat himself out of a job if he goes to guard.
No. But ultimately,
Ricky Pearsall in the first round.
Yeah, that was.
Pearsall.
I mean, pretty Ricky. He's got it. He's slick Rick.
But
the Chiefs got 3 fast receivers too, man. They got Worthy. They've already got Hollywood Brown, and then they got the 117-mile-per-hour man and Rashee Rice. So, you know, they got some speed demons out there.
He's the fastest out of all of them.
Yeah, he is. Tested well.
Yeah. Xavier Legette, Carolina trade in to 32 to end the day.
5th-year option.
Why did they do that?
5th-year option.
Oh, but it's Legette still. There's better
They have
receivers
Jonathan
there than
Mingo
Legette.
already.
They
He
got
is
Mingo
Jonathan
already.
Mingo, in my opinion.
Yeah.
It
So
is
I don't know.
what
And
it
then
is.
how bad did that trade with Carolina and Chicago look when they threw it up there right before they picked Caleb Williams? That shit looked terrible, man.
Every time it gets worse. Every time
Every time you look at it, it gets even worse.
That's rough.
What do y'all think at 38? I mean, what position are y'all leaning towards? I floated a couple theories on Twitter last night and this morning about Jackson Powers Johnson, and that's just because I love that guy, man. I've seen what he can do at guard in the Senior Bowl.
So what my original plan was, we always end each show with a draft. I want to do a draft with us today with these players that are left on the board. Obviously, we're only 7 picks away from 38. If we do 4 picks each,
so far away.
That gives us 12 in total. Surely one of us can pick the correct one. Hopefully.
I think so.
Surely.
Hopefully. We didn't plan on this before. Me and Jonathan were a little inebriated. I didn't make show notes or anything for this show. So we didn't talk about the draft order.
I tried to do the show last night. That's how drunk I was.
Yeah. Jonathan was here last night. Nobody
last
checked
night.
it out.
I was trying to do the night glory show. Nobody was here.
The Glory Hole show. So I'll go ahead. I don't remember the order we're in currently, but I'll go ahead and do the 101. Jonathan, if you want to do the 102, B Will, you can be the back-to-backs. But I'll go ahead and start off just because I alluded to it on Twitter. There's a guy out of here, high school, Iowa, long jump champ, Cooper DeJean, the Great White Hope. I will take him with the 101. Cooper DeJean.
He really is, isn't he?
You can argue he's a corner, he's a safety. I ultimately think he is a safety, and I think he's the best safety in this class. This is a guy that I have 13 on my big board, with the second highest graded secondary player, only behind Quinyon Mitchell. So I think this is maybe one of the biggest needs on the team at safety, and we're looking to put another guy back there with Denard Wilson that can elevate the secondary even to the next level with L'Jarius Sneed and Roger McCreary and Uzi and all these other guys. So I'll go Cooper DeJean with the 101. Jonathan, who are you taking with
this
the
for us at 38, right?
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
Like on my based on the big board, who's available?
Yeah, just whoever you want. Who you think the Titans will draft?
See, that's tough because there's 2 guys. Since I'm picking second, and I don't want to shoot B-Will here. So I'm going to take my favorite player. But there's a player that they absolutely should draft. He's the number 1. Let me just play along here. They need to go Johnny Newton if he's on the board. He's not going to be, but they need to. If Jermaine Newton is available, which maybe it's like a medical thing, but seeing Leatu Latu drafted 15th to Indy with his neck issue. Like, clearly he's okay there. Every guy that was drafted in the first round that had any like injury issues, those guys were drafted. So to me, to see Johnny Newton fall into the second round makes me think like, oh, did he maybe not clear medicals the way that he needed to? But surely not. Maybe it's just a predicament, right? But regardless, I don't think that he makes it past 35 to Arizona. But if he does, it's got to be Johnny Newton.
I think the biggest win for the Titans last night was maybe Indy drafting the first defensive player off the board and going with broken back Leatu Latu. He was my 4th greatest edge defender. It was a guy I didn't like after the Senior Bowl. And with guys that they still had on the board, I mean, they could have gone Dallas Turner. Obviously, the consensus edge one, Jared Verse. Like, you can go Chop or Terrion Arnold. There were so many other guys there.
Dallas Turner.
Ballard, most overrated GM in the league.
100%. He got Quentin Nelson in that first year, if I remember right. And it's been shit since then, really.
I got some friends who are like big Colts fans, and all of them had kind of the same reaction. It was like, bro, get Ballard out of here. They've been screaming fire Ballard for years, and he just keeps doing shit like this. So appreciate you, Chris.
I'm sure Irsay and Latu had a common thread with, some things off the field. So I don't know. We'll see. My third pick will probably be, if I had to pick who all's left on the board, and this could really solve a need. This could really solve the offense side of the ball, to be honest. We probably need a guard still late. But I would go Lad McConkey in second. It solves a little slot receiver dilemma we have. Knocks Traylon Burks down a little bit in the pecking order, and, that's probably a spell the end of Kyle Phillips. But you talk about a dynamic slot receiver that gets separation, just crafty with route running. I mean, we're going to have two really, really, really good route runners on our team in Calvin Ridley and Lad McConkey if we get him. And he'll open everything up underneath for Will Levis and be a good safety valve for him underneath. Him, Pollard, Tajay Spears, that'll help the offensive line as well. We've got guys that get open quick. So I would definitely say Lad McConkey there. And then my second pick, if Lad McConkey isn't there, will be Adonai Mitchell from Texas. I know he has they claim that he has health issues with
he got the
diabetes or something. Yeah, the beaties. So, this diabetes didn't just come out yesterday. I mean, we can manage that.
Scout putting it out there to slander a player to have him drop down the board so they can draft
100%. You think he hasn't been playing with diabetes? Isn't it type 1? Isn't it type? It's clearly type 1.
Yeah,
bro.
The Titans have a history of doing this shit too.
He's been managing that diabetes his whole life.
The Titans are a nasty, nasty, nasty organization when it comes to slandering prospects. We do it way too much. Allegedly, of course, but I mean, it just so happens every year it seems like we're doing that allegedly. And I'm like, God, dog, man, these guys don't give a shit. But, I mean, you talk about a coup to get A.D. Mitchell at 38. I mean, I don't think anybody did mock drafts. He wasn't making it to 38, and he's a special player. To me, I would have took him over Worthy anyway. I don't give a damn about the 40 time with Worthy. I think A.D. Mitchell is so refined and such a good profile to add to this team. I mean, we'll be set with receiving-wise if we get McConkey or A.D. Mitchell and allow us to focus on right guard spot and defense for the rest of the way.
So you got Ladd there, and the player that Ladd ran out of town, and A.D. Mitchell. No.
So yeah, I raised your Larry Bird with Pete Maravich with Ladd McConkey. That's my guy.
That's a good pick.
All right.
80 is a guy that I'm actually really high on. He was the top of my board. So like if it's me picking, assuming Johnny Newton's not going to be there, I mean, let's be honest, 80 Mitchell's going to be a Bill. He's getting picked at the top of the second round, in my opinion. But they could go Keon Coleman or something crazy, Ladd maybe. But I'm a really
they're trying to trade for Ayuk.
That
I
makes
don't know how they're
sense.
going to pay him, but that's why they traded out of the first round to get to 33. But I have no clue how they're going to pay them.
Makes sense. I mean, I like the plan by them. Cool. Okay, so for me at this point, 80's gone. I think we've targeted some of the top talent on my big board from here. I'll do it. I'll say it. We're playing the game, right? Like, we're not saying like trade back is the top priority, because to me it probably would be. But if we're playing the game of guys we would select at 38, if we got a stick and pick, which is just probably the reality given the fact that trades are probably just not happening at a high level, give me T'Vondre Sweat. I'll say it. Give me Sweat. Looking at his tape, looking at his production in the Senior Bowl, like, he is a stone wall. He is a very, very good player and is a bona fide top 3 nose tackle in this draft. And I think that it fills maybe not an immediate need. Like, maybe you could argue linebacker could make more sense here. Maybe you take a flyer on Junior Colson or something really, really early because it's just worth it and it fills an important need on your team and he's a good player. But T'Vondre is a really good player too. And I think they kind of alluded to some players sliding off their board. The pre-draft presser, they mentioned they had some guys that they took off the board based on some character stuff. And T'Vondre, as we jokingly said, arrived in Nashville the day after he had his issue in an orange jumpsuit. So maybe that meeting didn't go well, and maybe T'Vondre is just off their board. But to me, he's still a fantastic player, and at that point could still be really good value.
100%. T'Vondre would have been my next pick, and listening to TD last week on the show and listening to him talk all throughout this week, I think somebody in the building is telling him, hey, look out for T'Vondre at 38. I think the team loves him. One decision doesn't make the man. We talked about it last week. I think the kid made a bad mistake, and I think he's going to improve like that. And getting him in the room with a Jeffrey Simmons, a guy that very similarly is been nothing but shining colors since he's been drafted, but had some pre-draft issues early.
And
so
not going to let his
put him in
teammates he's not going to let someone be Tier Tart again. Like Jeffrey Simmons was very vocal in saying, look, if guys don't want to be here, you need to get out. And we all knew it was Tier Tart. He was the only guy being talked about at the time as being like not all bought in. So yeah, I think, Tavondre, and I think they know that, like, Jeffrey Simmons would be a great running mate for him and great mentor to help him be the player he can be and like keep him straight. And that's the great thing when you have one of your primary team leaders on the defensive line, because he's so big and so dominant that it's like, bro, he's the true alpha. And like, you can't BS around Jeffrey Simmons. Like, he's going to call you out. In the media, he'll call you out. So that's another reason why I like the pick, Jake.
Real quick, dude, I like how you said that, talking about the true alpha. Think about who will walk out as captains in a few years. Look, Jeffrey Simmons will walk out there. Will Levis will walk out there. We talked about the leadership and before with who they're going to hang the banners on. Big-ass JC Latham walking out there at the coin toss. We got some dogs, man. It's really starting to take shape with this team, and you're seeing where they're going with it. I mean, big dudes, nasty dudes that are football guys.
100%. They talked about it last week that they want the get off the bus guys. JC Latham, 100% that. Jeffrey Simmons, 100% that. You pair that with a Tavondre Sweat, those big three getting off the bus first, that's putting the fear of God into teams. Yeah, awesome. So you kind of alluded to my next pick, and I put out my mock of who the Titans will select. Obviously, I had Joe Alt as the first pick. I had Junior Colson as the second one. Local kid.
Ravenwood High, baby.
Ravenwood High.
Yeah.
Obviously, at Michigan, he was a very vocal leader on that defense. And after left tackle, middle linebacker is probably the biggest need on this team. Looking at the big board, I mean, he might be a little bit further down than you'd be comfortable with, but I think he is the number one linebacker on the Tennessee Titans board. And even if it is a slight reach, it fills a huge hole. And I think they're getting a very safe player at the next level. So I'll go Junior Colson there. And then with my next pick, I'm pairing Bama back with Bama. I'm going Kool-Aid McKinstry, still on the board. They brought him in for a pre-draft visit, and I remember seeing on Twitter/X that all these people were like, well, he's not even going to be there at 38. Starting to look a little closer. He still might not be there, and a team could potentially trade up, but this is a first-round talent player, and they're going to bring in another cornerback. If it's not in the draft, it'll be post-free agency. They've got the big three, but Kool-Aid has the potential to be great. And this past season, and the past two seasons, really, he's played very well. He might have not had the upside of a Quinyon Mitchell or a Terrion Arnold, but we're talking just man coverage, mirroring ability. The dude's got it. So I'm going to go Junior Colson and then Kool-Aid McKinstry.
Definitely.
Those are good ones.
So I alluded to it earlier as well. But I don't know, and this is a guy that I absolutely loved. If we wouldn't have got Lloyd Cushenberry, it would have been a shoe-in for 38. And then I saw what he did at the Senior Bowl at guard when he had his reps at guard, and he looked damn near just as good at guard. He outshone the guards that were there, and he played center.
Are you trying to jump me and pick?
Pick.
Is it?
Yeah.
Yep. You got the turn.
Shit.
I was going to say whatever. It doesn't
really
I was going to let you pick and then be like, all right, Jonathan, who do you want?
I traded up.
Yeah, no. Hey, you know what? Go ahead. You laid it out. Sure.
I traded up. I gave you a late 7.
Sure.
But I mean, Jackson Powers Johnson, absolute dog at center, and he's a dog at center. But you can bump him to right guard, and you talk about this offensive line would be set. Let's forget about it for the next few years. We got Lloyd Cushenberry at center. We'd have Jackson Powers Johnson at right guard. We'd have Skoronski at left guard, and then we've got JC Latham at left tackle. And you're talking about 2 potentially all-pro guards that we have right there next to Lloyd Cushenberry. And then all we got to do,
guys.
Young too. All of them are young. And then we just got to figure out right tackle, whether that's MPF. Then you can move a Jalen Duncan over there that's uber athletic and move him to right tackle, or Dylan Radins, and let those 3 guys just battle it out for right tackle, and the best guy wins. And you're looking at turning a complete weakness into a strength and one of the best offense lines in the division potentially within a few years.
I think you can get a lot of pro-ready right tackles in this draft, even later in the draft. I mean, you go fourth, fifth round, you can get a Christian Jones, a Blake Fisher, a Walter Rouse, Javon Foster, Rosengarten. He might go in the second. We'll see. I've never seen such a big diversity between a player. I've seen Rosengarten with first-round grades, and I've seen him with sixth-round grades. So it could go a bunch of different ways. So it only takes one team, of course. But
what do y'all think about the move of Powers Johnson going to guard? Do y'all think that's something he could do?
Oh, 100%. I think he could 100% do it. And we're talking about JPJ, never given up a sack at Oregon, built like a brick shit house, probably the most impressive player at the Senior Bowl. He did ultimately suffer a little slight injury, which had him withdraw. But I think pro-ready center, interior offensive line, he's probably the best one. And I don't have to worry about his anchor at the next level or anything like that. Technique-wise, he's got it. So I think JPJ is going to be a great pro regardless of where he lands.
He'll probably get drafted as a guard as well. I wouldn't be surprised at this point, right? Like and when it comes to interior, I mean, there's still a couple guys on there, like a guy that me and Jake are really high on. Christian Haynes is still there, right? So there's some good interior guys, and I don't hate it. I don't hate it at all. I think, but at this point, I think the Titans are probably done drafting linemen high. They made it very clear that they like their depth, and I'm sure Bill does. And I like the depth at this point too. Now that you got your guy at left tackle for sure, we're in a good spot. I don't hate, but if they made that pick, I love JPJ. I've been really, really high on him since the Senior Bowl, and wouldn't hate that pick at all. Okay, so since I traded down, I have is this the last pick? Right?
So it'll be you,
one more?
B Will, and then I'll have the last pick.
Okay, cool. So on the swing back, so there's a guy who, for whatever reason, is a little bit lower on the big board, but he's pretty high on my board. There's two guys. I'm just gonna talk it through, and so hopefully I don't like spoil your guys' pick or put it on your radar or whatever. But another receiver that, if quite a few guys were gone, Keon Coleman, a guy that we haven't talked much about, does one or two things great, very well, and then everything else not very good. So I think he could really benefit from some tutelage. But you want to talk about a true big body X receiver, you can take DeAndre Hopkins and move him around, play. That gives your offense, in my opinion, good rotational value. You don't just have Nick Westbrook-Akine who has to run those routes. You don't just have to rely on Treylon Burks. You have add another really big body receiver that can contest to be on the team later than this year, right? Because past this year, Treylon Burks, NWI, not necessarily guaranteed, right? So this way you have your big body receiver that gets to learn from a good wide receiver coach in Tyke Tolbert and gives him a good chance to develop into a good player, having guys like D-Hop around him, having guys like Calvin. So I think it could make some sense, but that's not my pick. I just wanted to highlight him. My pick here is I think this pick just feels like defense, guys. It's like you add the Trench King, you make a big splash on offense. We got our left tackle, the future, good to go. This pick just feels like it needs to be defense, and I've kind of just gotten that vibe for a while now. So I'm actually going to go with edge Chris Braswell. He's a little bit lower on the big board rankings, whatever. But to me, he's the next best edge player that's available on this board, given Darius going pretty high in the first round, which is not a surprise. So I really like the edge help in this case. I also think that the edge talent drops pretty quickly. So I don't think that taking him at 38 isn't necessarily a reach, because regardless, he'd be picked in this round, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
No, I don't hate that at all. Braswell, obviously the other Bama prospect, and anytime you have two guys coming out of the same school at the same position, one of them is probably going to go slightly overlooked. I like Braswell, and I do agree. There is quite a significant drop off after Braswell. My next guy would be like a Jonah Ellis out of Utah, and then after that, I don't think I have a second round grade or maybe even a third round grade.
Adisa Isaac is interesting.
Adisa Isaac is good. And I think probably if you look at consensus big board, he has a second round grade. He was more productive than a Chop Robinson, more polished coming out for sure. Maybe not the athletic traits of a Chop has, but very few have that. So I don't mind that at all. And I did misspeak. So it will go Jonathan just pick, B will you'll pick, and then Jonathan, you have your fourth pick. You only pick 3. So, and then I'll wrap up. So B. Will, who we hitting with your last pick?
So this will be the second safety that I have left on my board with, grade wise. I got DeJean over him, but if DeJean's already gone, I would definitely take Tyler Nubin over after the three guys that I have. I mean, he's a really good safety. He's at Minnesota. He followed up the guy Winfield that's in Tampa Bay, I want to say. So he followed him up in Minnesota. Learned from him a little bit. It'll be a good pickup for safety. Everybody knows how I feel about Amani Hooker, but I think it will be really good pickup. And even if he's not there, we can get a guy like Cameron Kitchens and later on in the mid rounds if he's there in our fourth round pick. So, but I would take Tyler Newman, man. I think it'd be a really good fit for us. And we're just there because I think if we don't have those two top receivers and then maybe like a Jackson Powers Johnson and don't trade back, then I think defense is going to be the way to go. I'm not a fan of Sweat at 38. I just think we can get him a little later maybe.
I really like Tyler Nubin. And if you're thinking that Cooper DeJean is a corner, he's going to be your safety one. And I think that goes without saying. I see him very similar to a Kool-Aid McKinstry, not in play style, but as soon as he arrived on the scene, he was that dude. And he was very good. And he was very good for 3 seasons, I believe. But he never had that explosion great season similar to Kool-Aid. So I see them very similarly. And I've mocked Tyler Nubin to the Titans at 38 a few times now because he is just a well-rounded prospect. It might not be a guy you want to use as a split safety or he's going to be single high, but we're talking amazing box safety that can erase tight ends at the next level, in my opinion.
Which is very important to AFC South.
100%.
Well, not necessarily
and
AFC
at the
South,
top of the AFC.
Period.
Yeah, exactly.
So we got Kelsey. I mean, tight ends in the AFC is going to be a problem. So you got to get a guy that erases tight ends. You have to deal with Bowers for freaking 10 years.
Yep.
All right, is this back to me now?
It is your last pick.
Okay, so interesting. I think like the linebacker situation is interesting. There's a guy there. There's a couple guys there.
There's a couple guys.
I've kind of Junior Colson has really risen on my personal board as far as linebacker talent. I really like him. I think he is like a complete guy. And could be a leader for your team as well. So I like that pick earlier in the draft. There's a couple of nose tackles that are interesting here too. That I think another guy who's super versatile, super athletic, that is rising up boards. But let me just take a quick little look-see here.
You got the lot two of linebackers.
Right. And here's another thing too, like just to address this now for Titans fans out there who are saying, what if we took 2 tackles? That's not happening. It's done. So just a heads up. Now, a tackle later in the draft, maybe. Sure, I can get on board with like a late round guy just as depth. But they're not going to take like a Patrick Paul here, Kingsley Suamatia. Like that ship has sailed. Like it's NPF versus Dylan Radins at right tackle. And Jalen Duncan is in that mix too. So you have 3 guys who you think are probably going to start for you at right tackle. So to me, you don't waste a high second-round pick in that case. So we're not going double tackle. Hate to break it to double tackle fans out there, but
hope Jalen Duncan wasn't practicing at left tackle this offseason.
Yeah, there's a guy on here that I think
was just practicing.
I'm gonna go away from receiver because at this point I think you could probably wait. And to be honest with you, I'm team trade back. Really big in this one, but I'm going to take a fun pick for my last pick, and I'm going to go with the guy who is a freak of nature athlete at this, and you could arguably shift him anywhere on the defensive line, which is what makes me excited about him. I like Braden Fisk. Might be kind of reach a little bit at 38, but he's everything on the he's productive in tape, and he absolutely stole the combine. Defensively anyway, like absolute freak of nature, bro. This guy can move and he can play. He plays the interior. You could probably bump him to the outside, like the same type of Danico Autry versatility, and that's what gets me excited about him as a player, and that's why I think he's a good fit. It's unfortunately a little bit of a reach in my opinion. You could probably wait into the 50s or late 40s to get him, but situationally you just would take him in that situation. So yeah, I like him.
Think about on third down, we've got him, Big Jeff, Arden Key and Landry, all standing up right there at the line of scrimmage on third down. And we got a linebacker and a safety up there too with them. And you have no clue who's coming, where they're coming from. But you got a guy like Fisk, uber athletic. You got a guy like Simmons, uber athletic, that are just, you have no clue where they're going. So I wouldn't be mad at that pick at all. I like Braden Fisk a lot.
Yeah.
You can't double
especially
team
with how
everybody.
much sim pressure will do. Right.
Yep.
All right, well, I guess I got my last pick. I've basically only gone secondary at this point, so I'm going to mix it up a little bit. And if I'm just looking at my big board, Kamari Lassiter would be my top pick, but obviously I know I'm a little bit higher on him, followed by Kingsley Sumatia. I don't think they're going to draft him, and I don't think he's going to make it to 38. But I'm going to go with a wide receiver here. And there's two that I could really go back with. But I'm going to go with the one they've actually brought in for a visit. They've actually spoken with. And we're thinking no block, no rock. I'm thinking Roman Wilson out of Michigan. Roman Wilson, demon as far as speed goes. One of the best, I would say the best receiver at the Senior Bowl. And we know Rand likes his Senior Bowl guys. Out of the 6 picks last season, 3 of them were there, and 3 of them performed very well. So I'm going Roman Wilson. He's going to fit into the slot, and I don't think he's has to play in the slot. I think he can succeed on the outside. But great human being. Sounds like he's got all the things between the ears. And I think you put him in a room with DeAndre Hopkins and Calvin Ridley. Traylon Burks, sorry, you're out the door. But I think ultimately that's a great receiving core with our offensive line that we're building around Will Levis. He's got all the traits. I'm not saying Will Levis is going to be a top 10 quarterback this season, but by the season's end, barring injuries, we're going to know if he's the dude or not, in my opinion.
And the very, very, very unfortunate that Will Levis doesn't work out. I mean, I think we'll have more ability to trade up for a guy next year. Carson Beck, Shador Sanders, they're there. It's just a matter if we could get to him if that happens. But I like the Roman Wilson pick too. One thing that makes me a little hesitant with taking a guy like McConkey that's a pure slot is that it sort of pigeonholes Hopkins outside and doesn't allow him to move inside next year or the year after if we keep him. So I'd be sort of hesitant to take a slot, but I just can't pass up on Pete Maravich, Larry Bird, Lad McConkey.
We're not hurting at slot, by the way, guys. We have two guys that are very capable.
We have Kyrus Jackson.
D-Hop and Calvin can play the F. Like these guys, you have the ability to move them around, and they already told us they're doing that. So to me, what that says is that you get to just take the best player at receiver. Just take the best talent, and you can fit him in anywhere. And that's why, to me, if you get like a big body guy like Keon Coleman would make sense in this offense because you have talent you can slide elsewhere. If Keon Coleman goes to Buffalo, they're in a little trouble because he's like the vocal part of the offense on the outside. So I think that depending on where the talent goes matters. And for us, we're in a better spot than I think the fan base is kind of admitting here because, Kyle Phillips is unproven, Traylon is unproven, and you have 2 guys who are great. But to your point, we can't – if you just have a situation where you have wide receiver talent that has versatility and they are best when they are moved around, you have to be able to do that with those guys. You can't just force them to the outside because we saw it with D-Hop. There were several games last year where D-Hop was a non-factor because they just took him out of the game. So I think it's great we get to just take the best player, in my opinion.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, this is such a deep receiver class too. I mean, obviously we talked about Roman Wilson, but I mean, guy I'm super high on, Jalen Polk, as the other guy is debating on. He does have that size and the ability to play on the outside, and he did that at Washington last season. But I mean, even 4th, 5th round to get a Lad McConkey, a Brendan Rice. Malachi Corley's still out there. Troy Franklin is a guy we didn't bring up that a lot of people are higher on. So there's lots of players out there that they could grab at wide receiver later in the draft.
Can we squeeze in one final segment, like a really quick thing for each
100%.
person? Let's go in a row. I'll let you guys go first. Is there? Wait, first, are we in agreement that trade back is probably best?
100%. And I think
I don't know.
even if they don't trade back from the third into the second and acquire that third, I wouldn't be surprised in the slightest if they package some of these picks and move back into the third and trade up.
So here's my question, B. Will. I'm glad that you reacted that way. Is there, and maybe it's more for me and Jake, but everybody, is there a guy that would be at 38 where you would go, I accept no trades? I'm not. For me, it's those. I have to take this guy.
For me, I would say A.D. Mitchell, Lab McConkey, Jackson Powers Johnson. Outside of those three guys, and then Newton as well. So outside of those four guys, I wouldn't. They'd have to give us a haul.
Pick one. One guy that you'd say no shot. I don't care what the trade is, unless it's just insane.
I think Newton.
Yeah, mine would be Newton is a good one. I would go Cooper DeJean though. I have a mid first round grade on him. He's the highest on my big board that's remaining. I think he fits a need, and it's very rare that need and talent match up. And if he's there at 38, I'm sprinting to the podium.
I agree with you guys. I like those picks, but for the sake of doing a different one, mine would be A.D. Mitchell. Mm-hmm. If A.D. Mitchell is there at 38, you don't accept a trade. You take that player. And to me, that's a slam dunk draft. I couldn't be much upset based off of everyone else because you get your left tackle of the future, you get a stud receiver. I'm in. Though I don't think it's going to happen. But yeah, that would be my no trade back. You got to pound, sprint to the podium.
Mm-hmm. No, I think we got the meat and potatoes out of the way in the first round. Now it's time to get sexy, boys. Bringing in some heat in the 38. So that's how I see it. Let's go ahead. I want to do one more thing. Let's just go snap judgment. I want to grade F through A on the JC Latham pick, and then we'll close out this show. We started with you at B. Will, the last one. Jonathan, A through F. What do you give the first round pick?
Is this after my, now that I've sat with it, or you want my immediate reaction?
No, I want we're the Morning Glory show, so we sleep on it here.
Yes, so we did.
I want your
We didn't sleep much, but we did sleep on it. So, yeah. So my grade for the pick after sleeping on it, after looking at some tape and doing some fair due diligence, I'm a really big fan of the pick. I love the player. I think he could be a huge get. We'll see. But I think A- is very fair. I love the player after looking at it, and I'm like, man, I can't believe I got the wool pulled over my eyes. He should have been in the same conversation with Olu and with Joe Alt, and he just wasn't. So, yeah, I loved it. I'll go A- because I'm high on it.
Like it. What about you, B. Will?
So after sleeping on it and, looking at tape like you said and then going through some things with Latham, he was always somebody that I looked at as a good tackle, but I just didn't look at him for us because I didn't think he would go this early.
Yep.
So, an A in this situation would have been trading back and get him, obviously. But, after looking further into it, the guy's a dog, and he's a 340-pound left tackle at the end of the day that's moving really, really, really good. And we've got Bill Callahan to nurture him along the way. So I'm going to give it a B+, simply because I feel like we might have been able to get him at 9, 10. But, you really can't expect them to trade back in those 15, 20 minutes. And then you also see how many tackles went off the board immediately. So we got our guy. It sounds like we got the guy that we wanted. And then we got it at the, without having to trade back and, like Rand said, play sort of Russian roulette with if we get our guy or not. So it was a safe pick to get Latham right there and to not try and trade back and be too extra. So I'm not mad at it. I'd say it's a B+.
B+, we got A-. I'm a little bit lower. And I think snap judgment, I was probably like C+.
Yeah,
I bumped it up a little bit. I'd give it a solid B- now, just based on who was on the board, the potential trade back option. I mean, there's some things that knock it. Still a big fan, and B- equal degrees, and Titan Maximus agrees with B-. So ultimately, if we collectively put those together, I think we're sitting at a B+, B-, or almost.
So let me ask you guys this.
B+.
Let me ask you guys this. If you knew for a fact, because the rumors are that the Jets would have preferred Latham at 10 because you plug him in at right tackle, and then when Tyron Smith is gone, then you just move him to left tackle, and he's the future of your team. So if you guys knew that for certain the Jets had targeted him and they were going to take him if he was there at 10, because Alt wasn't going to be there. If you know he's gone at 10, so trading down is really not an option. Do you guys feel the same way? And you also know that JC Latham was the guy the whole way for the Titans. How do you feel?
So
is the grade the same?
If he's higher than Fashanu on my board, then I wouldn't be happy about it. But for me, I had Fashanu over Latham, so I would have been happy with it taking him at 10. But, Bill Callahan, a guy that knows way more about offensive line than I do, and anybody in this fucking stream, anybody on this video, knows a lot more about offensive line than us. So we got to trust him. I mean, people talk about trusting Callahan for the last 4 or 5 months, and then he makes a decision and gets his guy, and then we're like, come on now. So have some feel.
So if I have to look at it with the potential trade back, and obviously Latham's off the board, and I look at it and I go, okay, Olu might be there, Brock Bowers might be there, Rome might be there, Falonga might be there, Amarius Mims might be there. If I compare that player plus another fourth, maybe the trades were shit and they couldn't get a third. If I can do that with a Javon Baker or a Malik Washington, I would prefer those two players over just a JC Latham. So I would have preferred that slightly. But ultimately, we got a lot of draft ahead of us, and it's going to be a marathon. And then we're going to break down everything next week, and I might do a little live show after tonight, or we'll see. We'll be putting the content out there. But of course, if you're checking us out the first time, head over to YouTube, type in Glory Day Sports, go subscribe, like the show, help us build this up, help us get to 600 subscribers. Go follow Jonathan at Esports Valen. Go follow B-Will at TFTV Sports on Twitter/X. You can follow me at Glory Day Sports. Got a little over 400 of y'all in the chat. We appreciate all of y'all joining us tonight. It's going to be an exciting day too. We want to be popping up there in Twitter, and we'll be talking with you guys, and we'll check y'all out next week. We appreciate y'all. Peace.